Howdy, and welcome to Chapter 2 of For General Security Concepts. As always, I will begin each chapter with proper attribution to the authors of the textbook, the fact that the slides remain their intellectual property, although in some cases I have either hid slides so we don't have this overly complex or added some slides. And I have permission to use these slides from Dr. Conklin for this course. Let's start with our first video then. Here's the learning objectives, basic terms associated with computer and information security, basic approaches, basic principles, and we're going to distinguish among various methods to implement access controls. There we go again, talking about access controls. We're going to describe methods used to verify the identity and authenticity, and at this point you should be thinking authenticity, authenticate, identify and authenticate, goes together, and some of the basic models. Let's go through some definitions. I have put in red which definitions I consider to be most useful for this particular class. If you are going to take the CompTIA Security Plus exam, you may need to know this other information, but not for this class. For instance, the star property is some aspect of the Bell-LaPadula security model, and it's commonly referred to as something called the no write down rule because it doesn't allow a user to write a file with a lower security classification, thus preserving confidentiality. Does that make sense? Sure. The higher you would go up in security, you don't want to write a document that lowers that security. Access control, it's in red. That means it's important. It's a mechanism or method used to determine what access permissions subjects, such as users, but it could be applications, other machines, whatever, have for specific objects, such as files. Access control is one of the NIST family of controls, and to me it is one of the most important. We will have a separate video on the NIST controls. Again, in the beginning it seems overwhelming. They're very well organized, and I will tell you the subset of control families you need to be familiar with. However, access control, AC, is its own family, and of course, allowing access or not allowing access, and under what terms and conditions to allow access, is one of the basic foundations of cybersecurity. Auditability is just what it says. The property of an item that makes it available for verification upon inspection. You audit it. You verify it's doing what it should do. Authentication is a process by which a subject, such as a user's identity, is verified. For instance, how do you know I am who I say I am? Well, what if I told you I was a lawyer and I was a professional engineer and I told you all these things? I've identified myself, and perhaps I've convinced you, but how would you authenticate what I'm telling you is valid? Well, guess what? You can go to the the Texas Board of Professional Engineers, as well as the Texas Bar, and find out that yes, you are authenticating that my picture is there and I am who I identified myself as. Now, I'm going to go quickly through these security models, but they're not in red. So for instance, like the Bell-Padula model, it emphasizes confidentiality and is characterized by a no read up or no write down rules. Does that make sense? Again, don't worry about it. Just know, perhaps, that that's a model and it has to do with confidentiality. I'm not interested in the rest. The BIBA security model is often called the wall model, and it's that the information security model is built around integrity and characterized by a no write-up and no read-down rules. Brewer-Nash is a computer security model defined by controlling read and write access based on conflict of interest rules. And Clark-Wilson security model is a security model that uses transactions and a differentiation of constrained data items and unconstrained data items. I'm not worried so much about this. Here's what I want you to know about security models. There's several different models. They're based on what their focus or scope is, purpose, typically either confidentiality or integrity, not important. Just as complete mediation is the principle that protection mechanisms should cover every access to every object. Okay, that makes sense. Any way you can access an object needs to be covered with protection mechanisms. Now the ones that are in red. We've talked about confidentiality. It's part of the CIA of security. It refers to the security policy, or principle rather, that states that information should not be disclosed to unauthorized individuals. We're going to look at confidentiality, integrity, and availability as your CIA model. Default deny, the use of an overarching rule that if not explicitly permitted, permission will be denied. That's good common sense. Unless it's specifically permitted that you can access a file, that you can edit a file, that you can delete a file, that you can read a file, the default is that you deny. Diversity of defense is the approach of creating dissimilar security layers so that an intruder who is able to breach one layer will be faced with an entirely set of defenses at the next level, with the idea that, okay, maybe they can figure out the first level with their tools and tricks, but not the next level. And last, defense in depth. You have lots of layers in your security, while diversity of defense, by comparison, is saying those layers should be as difficult as possible. Next term, economy of mechanism. The principle that design should be small and simple. Keep it simple. Make it as simple as possible. No extra interfaces, no extra interactions, no extra buttons to be pushed, no extra access. Make everything simple. Simple paths of access, an easy to use interface, anything that you can, make it simple, because simple is easier to use. Fail-safe defaults. The principle that when a system fails, the default failure state will be a safe state by design. So if the system is going to fail, it fails gracefully. We've talked about hacking, the term we've used, the process of gaining unauthorized access to computer systems and network. It's a term that has morphed over the years. It's also been referred to as the process of delving deep into the code and protocols used in computer systems and network. Some people call it cracking, hacking. Okay? Host security is the security function that is present on a host system. Wow, that makes sense, right? You have a host, you make it secure. Implicit deny is a situation that is different than normal for a specific circumstance. And we'll see more of this. Now we come to integrity, CIA. Integrity is part of the CIA of security, the security principle that requires that information is not modified except by individuals authorized to do so, and that the integrity of the data, so that it is accurate and correct, is preserved. Least common mechanism is the principle where protection mechanisms should be shared to the least degree possible among users. Least privilege, a security principle in which a user is provided with a minimum set of rights and privilege that he or she needs to perform required functions. Always, always, always give your users, give your systems, give your applications least privilege. Low watermark policy is an integrity-based information security model derived from the Bell-LaPadula model. Network security, protection of multiple computers and other devices that are connected together. An emphasis is placed on controlling access to internal computers from external entities. Open design, the principle that protection mechanisms should not depend upon secrecy of design for security. The operational model of computer security is a term I tend to stay away from. It's in your book. It's about structuring activities into prevention, detection, and response. The reason I stay away from it is that there's operational technology environments, OT, just like there's information technology environments, and then there's this operation model of computer security. OT, don't confuse the two. OT are highly automated systems. You'll hear me refer to them quite a bit. They're industrial control systems or SCADA systems. OT, operational technology, as opposed to IT. Operational model talks about prevention, detection, and response, but it uses the terms differently than the NIST standards. And phreaking, not an important term anymore, hacking into computer systems and networks associated with the phone company. I think I skipped one, non-repudiation, which is the ability to verify that an operation has been performed by a particular person or account or entity, and it's a system property that prevents the parties to a transaction, typically financial, from subsequently denying involvement in the transaction. A few more, and we're finished. Psychological acceptability is a principle that protection mechanisms should not impact users, or if they do, the impact should be minimal. And I'm going to post a video from NIST on cyber fatigue related to this. The ring policy is part of the BIBA security model, a policy that allows any subject to read any object without regard to the object's level of integrity and without lowering it. Security through obscurity, and maybe I should have put this one in red. An approach to security using the mechanism of hiding information to protect it. And guess what? It doesn't work. Okay? Separation of duties, a basic control, again, control, that prevents or detects errors and irregularities by assigning responsibilities to different individuals so that no single individual can commit fraud or malicious activities. So separation of duties. It's a way to try to preserve the access so that an individual doesn't have complete access to be able to perpetrate fraud or malicious acts. Separation of privilege is a security design principle stating access should be based on more than one item. States that critical items should require multiple parties. Okay, similar to separation of duties, but yet not the same. It's a design principle. And last, the simple security rule is just what it states. Complexity makes security more difficult, and hence value simplicity. So we've talked about hacking. It's used in the media. It used to mean technical expertise. Now it's the, young person with the hoodie up, which is a stereotype, and like all stereotypes, probably false. Phreaking, I'm not going to worry about this term. It's a hacking of systems and computers used by a telephone company. So before we go to the next video for Chapter 2, if you would like, take this web link posted and check out this true story, how an earlier hacker used a serial box whistle to take over phone lines. True story. Its impact is that when Kevin Mitnick, one of the world's most famous hackers and the person who defined the term and social engineering, was caught and sentenced in federal court, the prosecutor made an offhand remark that Mitnick was so good he could whistle on the phone lines and bring down the American defense systems, at which point the judge sentenced him to solitary confinement. So a bit of old school cybersecurity lore there. Let's proceed to Chapter 2, yes, but Video 2 in our next video.